Kelcy Warren's rise to power and his corporate acquisitions are many and interesting. Kelcy Warren, a billionaire CEO of Energy Transfer Equity, the parent company of Energy Transfer Partners, the parent company of the Bakken Dakota Access Pipeline, LLC, of which Obama has put a stop to yesterday. For some reason, these companies don't have to pay any income taxes. At least ETE and ETP don't have to pay anything. No income taxes, none. More on that in a second. Kelcy Warren got his biggest break when he bought Indevco. Indevco is an oil company that Kelcy Warren was working for, got into financial trouble after they made a poor investment in a refinery, and so in 1993, Kelcy Warren and billionaire Ray Davis, who is now the co-owner of the Texas Rangers baseball club, bought Indevco out of bankruptcy. When they sold Indevco 2 years later, Kelcy Warren had actually profited $13 million. 2 years later, he threw the profits on the table, he says, so to speak. In 1995, he used the profits he made from the Indevco flip to co-found his pipeline company, Energy Transfer Equity / Partners, with a fellow billionaire, Ray C. Davis. So again, Ray C. Davis, they bought Indevco and made a ton of money, so they went ahead and co-founded Energy Transfer Partners. When the price of oil fell, and actually I don't know if Ray C. Davis is actually still part of the thing, because they do call it a kind of a partnership, a master limited partnership. But I haven't heard anything about Ray C. Davis in any of the current articles coming up. So when the price of oil fell, many of Kelcy Warren's competitors went out of business. In fact, he loves it when the oil prices go down and everybody's going out of business. He's kind of like the Donald Trump of the housing crisis. All the poor middle-class families are losing their homes, and then some rich person comes in and just buys all those houses up. So when the price of oil fell, many of Kelcy Warren's competitors went out of business, sold their companies on the cheap. He swooped in and bought a bunch of them, including thousands of miles of pipelines that Enron used to own. So he bought all of Enron's crap after they flubbed and drowned. When it comes to Energy Transfer Partners, for some reason, to make investors feel more comfortable, Kelcy Warren had to start Energy Transfer Equity. ETE owns 1% of the shares of ETP, Energy Transfer Partners. And they're related in some mysterious ways. I don't know 100% how or why, but the ETE is the parent company of the ETP, but ETP is the main company. Both are part of the same pipeline building empire that Kelcy Warren has built up. Since Energy Transfer Equity is the parent company to Energy Transfer Partnership, then that would make, and then Energy Transfer Partnership is the parent company of the Bakken Dakota Access Pipeline, LLC. That would make the Bakken Pipeline a grandchild of the Energy Transfer Equity, right? Okay, for some reason, both of Kelcy Warren's ETP and ETE doesn't have to pay any income taxes. Both of them, okay? None. The reason why this is because they're set up as a master limited partnership, or an MLP, which is used primarily by energy companies. But a master limited partnership is a company that is publicly traded on an exchange, qualifying under Section 7704 of the Internal Revenue Code. A master limited partnership combines the tax benefits of a limited partnership with the liquidity of publicly traded securities. Theoretically, a master limited partnership makes for bigger dividends for stockholders, greater profits since it avoids the so-called double taxation of dividends. In short, a master limited partnership is a legal trick, so Kelcy Warren didn't have to pay all of his taxes. That's the reason why he has an MLP. So he doesn't have to pay any of the federal income taxes. Supposedly, as long as ETP, the earth-trashing parasites, pays out most of its cash to shareholders, that's how the taxes are paid somehow or some shit, as long as they're pumping out cash. I don't know. He just doesn't pay any income taxes because of the master limited partnership. So we should all have master limited partnerships. Turn ourselves into master limited partnerships so that way we don't have to pay any income taxes. You can't drink oil and you can't eat money. We all live under the same sky in heaven. We all breathe and drink the same air and water. We're all part of the great human family, and we are the stewards of this earth, if only for but a little while. Energy Transfer Partners is actually one of 4 master limited partnerships that Kelcy Warren has effective control. We're also made of star stuff. And so he actually owns 4 MLPs, and since MLP doesn't pay any income taxes, investors are holding units. which is what they typically would say is a stock, but for some reason investor holding unit is different than a stock, kind of like the equity. They have the two different equity. There's an equity company and a partner company. I don't know. So they have two different names for things that seem like it's the same stuff, but some reason, let's see, MLPs pay taxes on the quarterly cash dividends. That's how they pay taxes. They pay taxes on the quarterly cash dividends that they receive. So the advantage is that MLPs can acquire capital acquisitions and construction projects for a lower cost, such as the Dakota Access Pipeline, but they have to crank out cash payments to keep their investor holding units. So, yeah, I'm sure it's probably more complicated and there's a lot of legalese, but that's essentially what I understand, is they don't have to pay income taxes because they're this master limited partnership, and they don't want the double taxation, whatever the double taxation is, and so they don't pay income taxes, but they do pay taxes apparently on the dividends. That would be the stockholders, and I guess he's a stockholder, but he's not a stockholder. He's actually an investor holder unit, a unit, so he holds his unit, right? Not a stock, he holds his unit. And this forces Kelcy Warren to keep on growing his 4 MLPs until he dies, and that's what he says, just grow, grow, grow. And there's a criticism of his companies is that they are just a bunch of junk buyers. They just buy a bunch of junk and keep acquiring stuff, so it's easy to grow when you're buying all these companies up, but are you going to keep on growing by creating new things and more opportunities? How pipeline companies make money is they charge fees set in long-term contracts for moving molecules from point A to point B. They can also profit on spreads between spot market prices at different junctures. Increasingly, they're also adding value to gas as it moves by using heat, cold, and pressure to fractionate dry gas into propane and other liquids in heavy demand in the U.S. and abroad. Successful operators keep construction and maintenance costs low and their pipelines full from the minute they start pumping. While these companies aren't totally insulated from swings in commodities prices, are better off than most, especially if they spread the risk over a diverse array of businesses. So you got oil digging companies, pipeline businesses, refineries, jobbers, gas stations, transporters, shippers. The Energy Transfer Equity / Partners bought out Louis Dreyfus Hybridge Energy for $2 billion. They're going to start acquiring properties, right? So one of the first major ones was the Louis Dreyfus Hybridge Energy Company, $2 billion. Then Energy Transfer acquired Southern Union for $8.5 billion. Southern Union brought 20,000 miles of pipelines to ETE and ETP, which stretched into Florida and Michigan, as well as bringing a liquefied natural gas facility in Lake Charles, Louisiana, that Warren saw as a potential gold mine. Then Energy Transfer bought out Sunoco for a cool $8.7 billion, which owns nearly 5,000 gas stations. 4,900 Sunoco gas stations is more precise, and Sunoco also brought to ETP a vast Texas shipping terminal. So there's a big, vast Texas shipping terminal, which would be to the Gulf Coast, so they can export all this crude oil that they're going to be jacking out of North Dakota. Kelcy Warren seemed hesitant to buy Sunoco because he wasn't in the gas station peanut and Slurpee business, but eventually he said, what the heck, he'll go ahead and sell some crap directly to the American people too. Later on, ETP would merge with the Dallas-based Regency Energy Partners, which was an $18 billion pact. Today, ETE is converting an old Southern Union gas pipeline to carry Bakken sweet crude oil from Illinois to the Sunoco terminal in Nederland, Texas. And a ship set tie up at one of the 5 Nederland docks recently started loading propane funneled from a fractionation plant on a site once owned by Dreyfus in Mont Belvieu, Texas. The propane is moving all over the world. He touched on the topic during Energy Transfer's quarterly earnings conference call earlier this month. He said that he was a little frustrated right now because he expected that cheap oil, narrow natural gas processing margins would have created more takeover bargains. So he's, a little bit sad because his competitors aren't losing their, butts anymore. So the other companies are doing okay, and that's, making him mad. He's going for a monopoly here. He wants to buy all the stuff and then, be the man with the plan. Energy Transfer is developing a $9.6 billion export-import facility for liquefied natural gas on the Gulf Coast with partner BG Group, the UK gas producer that's agreed to sell itself to Royal Dutch Shell. So the Royal Dutch Shell, so BP Group is a BP, UK gas producer, sell itself to the Royal Dutch Shell. I hadn't heard that. So with oil prices down about 40% from a year ago, BG has yet to commit its part of the investment. BG, not BP. Okay, and Energy Transfer expects the facility won't be in service until 2020, a year later planned. I'm not happy about that. So it won't be in service until 2020. He wanted 2019. He's like, oh man, it's a whole nother year, right? I don't know. So yeah, Energy Transfer is developing the export-import facility for liquefied natural gas, the Gulf Coast. So he's got all these different projects in the works, right? So he's making this liquefied natural gas export-import facility. They promised before that the Dakota Access Pipeline was going to be all 100% domestically sold, and then eventually they pressed them on, and they're like, okay, that wasn't true. Especially when you got this, Nederland, Sunoco Nederland shipping bay and docks. They got 5 docks, right? 5 Nederland docks, and you're going to tell me that they have these docks and he has all these pipes and these connections and stuff. He's also got Sunoco. So I'm thinking that if you're a gas station in America and say that, let's just say you're Valero, and if you're Valero, then that would mean that you may or may not get cheaper gas or oil from this pipeline. Sunoco would definitely get it. Stripes will definitely get it. His own companies will get it. And when it comes to who will buy it on the market, whoever pays the most, he's going to maximize his profits. So I'm not for sure if we're going to save any money whatsoever by having domestic, oil pipelines because it's owned by a private, private guy. And yeah. So let's carry on. Generally, MLPs are overseen by one entity encompassing a general partner responsible for the operating units and strategy. In Energy Transfer's case, that's Energy Transfer Equity. ETE holds a 1.1% share of Energy Transfer Partners in addition to the incentive distribution rights, which are claims on the operating unit's cash flow. Last year, Energy Transfer Partners paid ETE $504 million. Warren, who's also the chairman of ETE, there's a big shocker, right? He's the chairman of ETE, he's CEO of the ETP, has much of his wealth tied up in that entity. Critics of the MLP structure say the arrangement benefits the general partner at the expense of limited partners. Warren says he thinks Energy Transfer can more than double its pipeline mileage to 150,000 in the next 10 years. It would help, he says, if oil prices would stay low a bit longer. The weak and the wounded will be vulnerable, he says. There will inevitably be those that feel they should consolidate into a more sustainable entity, and we'll be there. So he's like a vulture, right? Can't wait to swoop in and buy any of the weak and wounded. 71,000 miles of pipeline, and LLC was created specifically for the Bakken Pipeline. Dakota Access LLC is a subsidiary of the ETC, and in October 2014, the Houston-based Phillips 66, I want to say that's like a gas station or oil company or something, became a joint venture partner owning 25% stake in the Bakken Dakota Access LLC pipeline. So the Houston-based Phillips 66 is, key. Phillips 66 co-owns the Energy Transfer crude oil pipeline from Patoka to storage terminals in Nederland, Texas. That would be where the shipping docks are. So there's a big operation in Nederland, Texas. Sunoco has the storage facilities, processing facilities, refinery, and shipping docks. The Nederland, he's based in Dallas, but Nederland, it seems like it's a huge ordeal. Sunoco has 5,000 gas stations. So, let's see, Phillips 66 co-owns the storage terminals with the Philadelphia-based Sunoco Logistics Partners. In June 2015, Williams Coast, the rival which Energy Transfer Equity had been courting for over a year, rebuffed a $48 billion bid, only to accept a $32.6 billion deal just 3 months later. So that was actually interesting that they said, let's merge, let's not merge, and he was like, $48 billion, I'm not going to do that, because evidently he saw that they're weak and wounded, so he's like, well, what if I just give you $16 billion less? All right, fine. So that was a big, buy there. Williams Coast Companies, maybe, COS. Kelcy Warren's oil empire is so vast and complicated that there's so many things going on. The investors, this is what the critics think, that they fear that it'd be difficult for one person to keep their finger on the pulse of the whole shebang. But all of them seem to be doing well. The more complex that you make the MLP structure, the less obvious it is where these fees are going. Kaiser says what limited partners pay that fee for is up for debate. In Energy Transfer's case, said Bellamy of Robert W. Bard, they're paying for the smarts and guile of one of the world's top pipeline managers, Kelcy Warren. Investors baffled by the complexity of Energy Transfer's structure often park their money alongside Warren in a publicly traded ETE, the Energy Transfer Equity. That entity's total return to investors was more than 250% during the past 3 years, according to Bard. So it's been a pretty decent return, right? 250%. And what do you get for a CD? 10% maybe? What do you get if you put in a savings account? 1 or 2%? In addition to Energy Transfer, he essentially controls 3 other publicly traded companies stitched together so complicated that some analysts decline to even follow them. So he's got 3 other publicly traded companies in addition to Energy Transfer. That's probably the other MLPs. Master Limited Partnerships. He is also one of the country's richest men with a net worth estimated at $7 billion by Forbes. Mr. Warren owns a private island in Honduras, 8,000-acre property in Cherokee. He's got exotic animal ranch, and it's roving zebras in Buffalo. In 2012, another company he runs, Energy Transfer Partners. It's not another one. It's the same one we've been talking about the whole time. Agreed to buy Sunoco for $5.3 billion, while Sunoco was in the middle of a complex restructuring. The $5.7 billion takeover of pipeline company Southern Union Company was also in 2012. It came after a hostile bidding war. You cannot drink oil and you can't eat money, okay? Ugh.